viewers, welcome to this session. You all must have already enrolled and have gone through previous videos about the introduction about the gender budgeting. Today, let us learn about the evolution of gender budgeting. It is very important to know where and how the process of gender budgeting evolved over a time. Myself Dr. G. Uma from the School of Gender and Development Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University. I am the course coordinator of the course Gender Auditing and Gender Budgeting. Welcome to this session. For the past 3 decades, governments, international organizations and civil society groups have used a broad range of approaches to break down government budget and scrutinize them for their impact on women, men, girls and boys. These so-called gender responsive budget initiatives have been adopted as a strategic approach to the assessment of the role of budgets in promoting gender equality. We all know that financial resources is very significant to address the needs of the various groups in the society. Specifically, when we talk about the gender budgeting, it is not about the women's budget or not about preparing the budget for only for women. It is about addressing the needs of the male, female and other sections of specifically other marginalized sections of the society in the budget. The rationale for gender responsive budget initiative is that they help bridge persistent inequalities between women and men and facilitate development by integrating gender issues into macroeconomic policy and budgets. We all know that it is significant to address the needs of the each and every sections of the population in a particular country. So, how do we address the needs of the various sections of the population in the country? Budgeting is a very significant strategic approach to address the needs of the various sections of the society. Learning outcome of this session, specifically today's session, is to discuss the origin of gender budgeting process in different countries all over the world and explain the gender budgeting initiatives in South Africa and Australia. You all must be wondering, why did I specifically mention about South Africa and Africa in a learning objectives? The South Africa and Australia, these are the 2 countries are pioneer in implementing the gender budgeting initiatives. Before we talk about the evolution of gender budgeting initiative, let us again recall the definition of gender budgeting. Gender budgeting, I quote, gender budgeting initiatives analyze how governments raise and spend public money with the aim of securing gender equality in decision making about public resource allocation and gender equality in the distribution of the impact of government budgets, both in their benefits and in their burdens. The impact of government budgets on the most disadvantaged groups of women is a focus of special attention. I quote, this is the definition given by the IDRC 2001. This IDRC is an international organization located in Canada. Now let us learn about the origin of gender budget. First of all, the gender budgeting initiatives, not only gender budgeting like gender mainstreaming and gender sensitive planning and policy making, these are the various tools as part of the gender and development approach. These tools widely discussed in the 4th International Conference, which was held in Beijing in 1995. You all know that in United Nations, it has organized 4 international conferences at various places to specifically to discuss women's issues from 1975 onwards. First International Women Conference was held in 1975, afterwards 1985, 1980, then 1995. These are the 4 international conferences. The 4th international conference, which was held in Beijing in 1995, elaborately discussed about the gender and development approach. Not only it has elaborately discussed about the gender and development approach, it has developed, designed various tools to implement the gender and development approach. When we talk about the gender and development approach, it has specifically talked about the importance of various institutions, whether it is a government or other institutions. They play a very specific role in addressing gender issues. How do they address gender issues? Certainly they need various approaches, tools, techniques and strategies to address the gender issues. Thus, gender and development approach has talked about the gender budgeting is a very significant approach as part of the gender and development. Thus, in the 4th International Conference for Women in Beijing in the year 1995 discussed, as I have mentioned, different strategies to implement the gender and development approach. India also one of the signatory countries in the 4th International Women's Conference. Thus, like in India, many countries they agreed to mainstream the gender into their policies and programs. One of the strategies of gender and development approach is gender budgeting. As I have mentioned, there are various strategies of gender and development, that is the gender mainstreaming, gender sensitive planning and policy making, gender analysis. These are the various approaches as part of the gender and development theoretical understanding. So, thus gender budgeting is one of the strategic approach to implement the gender and development. The theoretical root of gender budgeting is feminist economy of interdependence between private and public budget. That is the theoretical root. I will explain in the next session what is feminist economy of interdependency. The international organizations like UNIFEM, Commonwealth Secretariat, International Development Research Center in Canada, these are the various international organizations. They have taken various initiatives to pursue gender budgeting initiatives. By looking at Australian experience, as I have mentioned in the beginning of my lecture itself, that Australia and South Africa are the pioneering countries in implementing gender budgeting in gender budgeting process. Looking at the Australian experience, number of countries they have taken initiatives to implement the gender budgeting. South Africa is another significant example where both civil society and government joined together and initiated the gender budgeting. Unlike in Australia, Australia is purely the initiative taken by the government. Unlike in Australia, the South Africa is a very we could able to quote a significant example because both civil society and government they joined together and initiated the gender budgeting. Let me explain about Australian experience. After explain about the Australian experience, we will learn about the other countries' experiences as well as we will learn about the initiatives taken by the international organizations like UNIFEM, like ILO and few other international organizations. As we have mentioned in the beginning of this lecture itself, I have mentioned that in the 1995 International Conference on Women in Beijing played a significant role in implementing gender budgeting. That is in 1995. Before itself, in 1984 itself, Australia has introduced the first gender budgeting initiative, taking budget as essential instruments for promoting gender equality. Pioneering analysis of the impact of public budgets on gender relations was carried out. Their focus is on assessing taxes and transfers, but they also refer constantly to the importance of engendering economic policies. In 1993, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, WILPF, established the Gender Budgeting Initiative in Canada. Based on the alternative concept of security, the initiative focused on welfare and defense expenditure. In 1989, United Kingdom Women's Budget Group emerged. The think tank, that is the United Kingdom Women's Budget Group, it is a think tank. This think tank composed of gender advocates from various sectors including labor movement. It originally began by publicly commenting on the effect the national budget under the Thatcher government was having on women. Till date, most of the UK women's budget groups work has focused on the analysis of national revenue raising mechanism such as changes in taxes and security instruments. If you look at the Commonwealth Secretariat initiatives, in 1996, inspired by the pioneers, the Commonwealth Secretariat launched a pilot project of government-led gender budgeting initiatives in Barbados, South Africa, Sri Lanka and St. Kitts and Nevis. These are the countries where the Commonwealth Secretariat launched the pilot project of government-led gender budgeting initiatives, as well as it has designed to enhance government capacity to apply gender analysis to policy and budgets. This pilot was also seen as the way of institutionalizing the Commonwealth Secretariat's gender mainstreaming strategy into policy development and implementation. Prior to this pilot, Commonwealth Secretariat has developed an innovative gender management system tool, a comprehensive and system-wide methodology for gender mainstreaming. The Commonwealth Secretariat pilot gender responsive budget initiatives served as monitoring tools for tracking expenditure in the gender management systems methodology. In the previous, if you look at my previous lecture, you must be knowing about the significance of tracking the expenditure, as well as after completing any project or policies, it is important to do the evaluation of the particular policies to know about the impact of that particular policy on various sections of the population in the particular country or particular regions. Thus, the Commonwealth Secretariat pilot gender responsive budget initiatives, it served as a monitoring tools for tracking expenditure in the gender management systems methodology. Countries participating in the pilot took a sectoral approach to gender responsive budgeting work by focusing on the expenditure side of the budget in three very vital sectors: health, education, agriculture. You all must have already listened my previous lecture. In that previous lecture, I have explained about the significance of implementing gender budgeting specifically in the sectors like health, education and agriculture. Thus, for example, if you take an agriculture, if you do not prepare gender budgeting or if you do not apply gender sensitive measures in preparing the budget specifically for the Ministry of Agriculture or Department of Agriculture, it may not address the needs of the women. The existing studies clearly talked about the women's contribution in agricultural sector, and specifically most of the agricultural activities, specifically the activities which needs like so much of that activities which specifically needs in the agriculture sector is carried out by the female members. If they don't, the particular government, if they don't collect data related to how much the women are contributing in the agriculture sector, how much the male members are contributing and the agriculture sector, what are the activities carried out by the female members, specifically in the agriculture sectors, what are the activities carried out by the male members in the agriculture sector, it may not able to address the needs of the female members in the agricultural sector. Thus, it is very important to focus on the expenditure side of the budget in various development sectors. The countries which has participated in the pilot project carried out by the Commonwealth Secretariat, they have specifically focused on the expenditure side of the budget in 3 sectors, that those sectors are health, education and agriculture. Like I have mentioned, various international organizations, it has taken initiatives to implement the gender budgeting initiatives either in their own organization or it has taken a pilot project in different countries. With regard to International Labour Organization, given the similarity of the Commonwealth Secretariat structure to that of the International Labour Organization in terms of governments formulating policy for the organization, it is important to highlight the approach taken by the Commonwealth Secretariat to move the pilot forward and highlight the lessons learnt. Like Commonwealth Secretariat, International Labour Organization also, it has taken various measures. In the initial, it has implemented the pilot project. Later, it took forward the pilot project. Whatever the lessons learnt in the pilot project, that has been incorporated and it has expanded its gender budgeting initiatives in various countries. I am continuing the what are the efforts taken by the Commonwealth Secretariat. In 1995, Commonwealth Secretariat developed the Commonwealth Plan of Action on Gender and Development. The plan was a strong political tool within the Commonwealth Secretariat because it went beyond just mandating governments to take action. It required the Commonwealth Secretariat to enhance its expertise in key areas, play a coordinating function, offer leadership and assistance. Like for example, the Commonwealth Secretariat has taken a good initiative, and in that initiatives it played a very significant role as well as it played a leadership role. And Commonwealth Secretariat, wherever it has implemented gender budgeting initiatives, and the Commonwealth Secretariat act as a coordinating agency, and it did a coordinating function. It offered a leadership and assistance and forward progress reports to the Commonwealth heads of government. These are some initiatives the Commonwealth Secretariat took to implement gender budgeting initiatives in various countries. In 1996, Commonwealth ministers responsible for women's affairs and the finance ministers endorsed the pilot project. Within the organization, the Commonwealth Secretariat gender section put significant effort into generating and winning support from Commonwealth Secretariat's economic program divisions. Throughout the process, whatever the Commonwealth Secretariat it has taken, throughout the process, ministers responsible for women's affairs at the country level strove to convince economists and finance officials that gender equality was also their concern. Request for technical assistance from Commonwealth Secretariat had to be submitted jointly by the ministries responsible for women's affairs and finance to facilitate an exchange of expertise. Specifically, even India also, there are the 2 significant ministries, Ministry of Finance as well as Ministry of Women and Child Development, took a responsibility to implement the gender budgeting initiatives. Like in India, many other countries also, specifically Ministry of Finance and the ministry responsible for women's affairs took a lead and took an expertise from the Commonwealth Secretariat, and they tried to implement gender budgeting initiatives in their own country. Leading experts were also key players in the process. They justified the rationale for the pilot and explained its operational process to government officials. Both Rhonda Shah, she is one of the leading female bureaucrats from Australian Initiative, and Debbie Butler, community coordinator from SAWBI. This is a significant development organizations. They both played significant roles in producing a wide range of tools necessary for the pilot implementation. This was quoted by Hewitt in 2002. Gender budgeting initiatives in various countries. I have explained little bit about the Australian experience as well as South African experience. Let me explain more initiatives taken at international level. As you all know, the notion of using gender responsive budget initiative is to promote gender equality. It became widespread in 1995 after the Beijing Platform for Action, when the United Nations called on governments to assess how public expenditures benefited women and adjust budgets to contribute to gender equality. On the issues of equality of access to employment, the United Nations recommended that governments, I quote, analyze, advise on, coordinate and implement policies that integrate the needs and interests of employed, self-employed and entrepreneurial women into sector and interministerial policies, programs and budget. I quote. This was cited by Roos in 2003 as cited by United Nations in 1995. So, thus United Nations asked the governments, first of all they asked the government to analyze the existing budget, how much it could able to spend, whether they are preparing the gender blind budget or gender sensitive budget or not, and they need to analyze, coordinate, implement policies that integrate the needs and interests of employed, self-employed, entrepreneurial women into sector and interministerial policies and programs and budget. They have to look into the different ministerial policies, programs, whether those policies really address the needs of the various sections of the populations. They need to, for that they need to collect gender disaggregated data. Based on the data, they need to analyze how much the women could able to reach in certain sectors. For example, if it is in health, do the women have an access to health facilities? Even if they access, will they able to take a treatment, or access means do the government could able to establish health centers close to the each and every hamlets in the particular country or not, or do they need to travel more than 3 kilometers to access the health service? If they do not have an health services, women may not be able to access it. It will reflect in the maternal mortality rate, child mortality rate, infant mortality rate. Those are the various indicators. Clearly it will show that the certain sections of the population, specifically women, they could not able to access the health services. That is why these indicators are low in various countries. Thus, it is important to analyze the various programs and policies implemented by the various ministries, whether these policies and programs could able to address the needs of the various sections of the population in a particular country. As far as South African example is concerned, in the context of developing countries, 2 NGOs, that is what I have told you. Unlike in Australian experience, in South Africa, development organizations, they have actively joined with the government to implement the gender budgeting initiatives. 2 NGOs and members of parliament jointly launched the South African Women's Budget Initiative in 1996. The South African Women's Budget Initiative is perhaps the most institutionalized gender responsive budget initiatives in the world. It has also been cited as one of the most successful initiatives because it draws support from civil society, parliament, government and international agencies. As a result, the South Africa Women's Budget Initiatives, I quote, has provided a major role model for development of gender responsive budgets, I unquote. The scheme, that is the South Africa Women's Budget Initiative, is a research and advocacy initiative focusing on national and subnational budgets with civil society doing the research and parliamentarians engaging in advocacy. These civil society groups, they do research. Based on their research, they could able to sensitize the parliamentarians in the South Africa, and the parliamentarians could able to do the advocacy to implement gender budgeting initiatives. Based on the research, they may have come out that in certain ministry may not be able to, or they are not addressing the needs of the women. Then that could be explained based on the data as well as based on field data as well as field study. Then the parliamentarians could able to really understand the issues in the field based on the civil society's research in the field and field based data. They have sensitized the parliamentarians, and thus the parliamentarians has engaged in advocacy to implement gender responsive budgeting in South Africa. During the first 5 years, the South African Women Budget Initiative only focused on analyzing the gender impact of expenditure. Analysis of the revenue side of the budget began later with research on direct and indirect taxation, donor funds and excise and customs. If you look at that, the South African Women's Budget Initiatives, like for example, in the initially they have concentrated only on expenditure side, later even they have analyzed the revenue side of the budget. Where will the government get revenue? Based on direct and indirect taxation, and they get a donor funds and excise and custom duties. These also, where all they getting the revenue and how much these, whatever the revenue the government is generating, how this revenue has been spent on various sectors, in which sector the government is spending more and which sector the government is spending less. This kind of analysis clearly shows that what is the government's priority area, why the particular government is not giving or is not prioritizing certain sectors. Those analysis certainly will help the government as well as policy makers to reprioritize their expenditure to address the needs of the various sections of the population in a particular country. This lecture I have prepared based on the references I have given. Hope you could able to understand the initiatives taken in the various countries, specifically the initiatives taken in South Africa, Australia as well as the Commonwealth Secretariat as well as UN agencies. They have taken various initiatives to implement the gender budgeting in various countries. These initiatives really help the other governments also to implement the gender budgeting. If we look at the various examples in these initiatives, United Kingdom, South Africa and Australia, they are the pioneers, and they have taken, like for example, if you take an Australia initiative, it is purely the initiatives taken by the government. When it look into the South African example, both government as well as the development organizations, they come together, they work closely and they could able to prepare the gender budgeting. And if you look at the United Kingdom, the women groups, they come together, they formed as a very active development organizations. They could able to do research and they could able to lobby with the government to implement gender budgeting initiatives. Like that, each and every example will help us to understand the significance of implementing gender budgeting initiatives. If the particular government, if they could able to implement the gender budgeting initiatives, that could address the needs of the various sections of the population in the country. Thank you so much for listening this session. In the next session, we could able to learn about the Indian initiatives as well as certain technicalities involved in budgeting process. We could also learn about the initiatives taken at the municipality level as well as initiatives taken at the panchayat level, specifically in India. Those are the, not only we are learning about the various initiatives examples, certain technicalities related to budgeting process also we will learn in the forthcoming sessions. Thank you so much.